Welcome to the Stronger Than Steel podcast with your host, Austin Davidson and John Keir, talking Steelers all the time. Now, here's Austin and John.
Hello and welcome back to the Stronger Than Steel podcast. My name is John Keir, and joining me as always is my co-host, Austin Davidson.
Heyo.
It is Season 2, Episode 50, but before we get into that, Austin, Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving to you too, man. Episode 50 and it's on a holiday. It feels right. It feels correct.
It is 1 a.m. on Thanksgiving morning. Austin and I we could use some sleep, but you know what? We're bringing you some content, and that's the most important thing. So before we get into things, Austin, just wanted to wish you that a happy Thanksgiving, and hopefully you have some good football to watch. But before we get to that, we have some NFL news to get to. So the Steelers are playing the Packers on Sunday Night Football. I think the biggest bit of news that we would have to talk about is the kind of surprising suspension of Marcus Gilbert. And there's a lot to talk about with that, but a 4-game suspension handed down. For Gilbert, the suspension starts immediately. That means that Gilbert will not miss the playoffs, but he will miss the pivotal game against the Patriots. It's definitely a difficult loss for the Steelers, but maybe at the same time not something they aren't prepared for. They've played a lot of Chris Hubbard this year, and I don't know, is there a silver lining to this?
I honestly think that Hubbard has been a decent replacement to Gilbert. Obviously, you want Gilbert because he's the better player, but it's a position where we have depth, where I feel like, all right, if we lost this guy, it's fine. He also said, I don't know how much to believe people, but he said it was an accident. He said that he didn't mean to take something that was illegal, but I feel like the team is given doctors to tell them, like, yeah, you can take this and take that. I'm pretty sure they do anyway. And it seems stupid, but I guess the silver lining is, to go back to the point, is that Chris Hubbard can play. Chris Hubbard is not a disability when put in there. He's slightly worse, but he's not a disability. He's still pretty good, in my opinion.
Are you thinking of liability?
I was thinking like he's hurting the offensive line. He's a crutch.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I've never heard disability be used in that sense before, but I
think liability is the better term. I don't think that was very PC, and now that I think about it, but
yeah, just double checking there for you. I think that's more so what you were meaning, but whatever the case may be, you covered it pretty well. The other thing to consider with Gilbert is that I don't believe he's ever had any other track record of kind of legal troubles or any other troubles with the game before. I certainly don't recall anything else. Do you, Austin?
No. I looked it up and I couldn't find anything.
So my initial reaction when he's saying that it was a mistake is to believe him. Now, that doesn't mean that he's not responsible for what goes in his body. He's absolutely responsible for that, and he should be held accountable for it. But all the interviews he was talking this season when he was hurt was just how badly he wanted to get on the field. And that's actually where NFL players use PEDs the most. This is a performance-enhancing substance suspension, and players tend to use those when they're trying to get back from injury, like Gilbert has been for much of this season. So it certainly does make sense that Gilbert could have taken the wrong substance at that time. Again, he deserves to be held accountable and suspended for this. However, I can guarantee you it won't happen again if he's smart about it. And then the silver lining with Hubbard, as you mentioned, he's a quality player. He's not the same pass protector, but at the same point, if you want to talk about a weak point or the fact that he's going to be starting most likely in the Patriots game. The Patriots only have 17 sacks this season, which is just 3 more than the last place teams in the NFL with 14. So their pass rush is not very good. So that means the Steelers should be able to mask the loss of Gilbert in that game going forward. So there's there shouldn't be too much they'll be missing Gilbert, at least for the next few games, and you'll have him back for the postseason, so that's definitely important. Beyond that, we'll get into some NFL news. Starting with the Eagles, opening up 9-1 this season after defeating the Ezekiel Elliott-less Dallas Cowboys on Sunday Night Football. After dismantling this team, is anything less than a Super Bowl appearance a disappointment for the Philadelphia Eagles at this point?
I have to say it is, because, I mean, to be fair, the NFC this year is so competitive with the Vikings and the Saints right on their tail. But, I mean, the Eagles are the clear favorite, I think. I think they've been number one in most power rankings from, like, right after the week they lost to the Chiefs, like week 5. I think they've been the favorite since then. And it's just, if they don't make it to the Super Bowl, I think Eagles fans are just going to be sad, because obviously they don't have a championship under their belt yet. And I think they really need to get there, like, soon. What do you think?
I would agree with you. I know the NFC is a pretty talented conference up top, but at the same point, the Eagles are clearly better than all of them, I believe. They're still a young team, but I think that it wouldn't be unfair to expect this team to make the Super Bowl. And if anything less is achieved, or if they fall short, I think it will be a disappointment. That's as simple as it gets for me. The Buffalo Bills, a team headed in the wrong direction, the opposite of the Eagles. On top of losing their last 3 games and giving up 135 points over those past 3 games, made a controversial decision last week in LA, starting Nathan Peterman, the rookie 5th-round draft pick, over Tyrod Taylor. Taylor was clearly not the biggest problem last week, as we learned, as Peterman responded in his first NFL start with 5 interceptions in the first half. Tyrod Taylor returned in the second half and has been announced to be the starter this upcoming week at Arrowhead Stadium in Kansas City. Is there any way to explain this dumpster fire of a decision, a process, an organization? Where do you even want to start with this one?
Sean McDermott was looking so good when he was at 5-2, and he's just gone downhill as he's arrived at 5-5. And honestly, I hope Tyrod Taylor in this next game absolutely goes off. Throws like 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, for like over 300 yards. And then I want him to publicly say he's leaving the Bills after this season. Because I think that Tyrod Taylor is a much better quarterback than the Bills have treated him. I didn't think Nathan Peterman was the right choice. And I think one of the metrics that I saw was in Nathan Peterman's one start, he threw more interceptions than Taylor did in this whole entire season, or it might be the past 2. It was something crazy. It was just insane, and I thought Tyrod Taylor was still the quarterback that should have been the quarterback for the Bills in this game. And after his 4th interception, they didn't pull him. I thought it should have been over right then and there, but apparently 4 interceptions wasn't enough. They needed the 5 in the first half just to solidify it. And you can almost guarantee you're probably not going to see Nathan Peterman very much at all in the future, unless Tyrod Taylor goes down. You're not going to see him at all. But what do you think of this dumpster fire?
Exactly what I was worried about. Exactly what I was worried might happen to the Bills last week happened, and then some. I stated on this podcast I expected Peterman to be not so good. I thought he would be pretty bad, and I openly questioned the decision to start him over Tyrod Taylor, since Taylor hasn't been awful this season, and the Bills' problems the past month or so, I felt as though they stemmed from the defense and a poor offensive line, not the quarterback. And I, along with a lot of other people, look smart now because Peterman, who I love, by the way, looked awful. And yes, it was 1 half, but at the same time, 5 interceptions is 5 interceptions. But throwing Tyrod Taylor back out there now, this week at Arrowhead Stadium, is a recipe for certain failure. You're playing, granted, a team that's struggled lately, but at their stadium where they don't typically play poorly. And beyond that, you're going back to a guy who a week ago you just basically said you don't trust. The Bills' mismanagement of Tyrod Taylor going back a couple of years now is mind-boggling to me. there were questions about bringing him back last year, and it's like, why? He's by far the most successful quarterback the Bills have had since they last made the playoffs, and you're willing to part with him. That's just insanity to me. This team is a mess, and I think part of the decision might have actually come down from the owner, Terry Pegula. I'm not going to say that it was his choice, but I wouldn't have been surprised if he kind of pushed for Peterman to start a bit there. But Buffalo, right after I said I believed in them, turn around and lose 3 straight, and they look lost right now. I wouldn't be surprised if they don't win the rest of their games. I mean, I assume they'll win more games, but, like, you have to look at this and say, they're just awful right now. They're so bad, and it really is a shame for them, but, I'm not a huge fan of Bills fans in my own opinion, but I have reasons to not like them, but it's a shame to see them handling Tyrod Taylor in that situation the way that they did. Furthermore, Austin, Josh Gordon of the Cleveland Browns has returned to practice today, or I guess technically yesterday, and he won't be eligible to play this week, but will be next week. Do you have any comments or thoughts on the matter?
I'm very curious to see if he's kept in football shape, like people have said. And I'm very curious to see if he's even, like, a decent player anymore. He only had, like, 1 season to be able to see from. And, I mean, being a Brown, it's hard to even do good anyway. So, I mean, that was promising. But I'm just waiting to see how he actually performs now that he's back. I want to hear about his practice. I mean, but practice doesn't mean anything. I really just can't wait for next week to see him play, see if he's still got it all. Do you have any comments?
I just want to see if he can help the Browns offense sustain a drive so they can win a game. That's all I want to see.
Damn.
Darrelle Revis is signed with the Kansas City Chiefs. You did hear that correctly. What do you make of this move?
I think anyone was better than Terrence Mitchell. I think you could have signed me and it would have been better than Terrence Mitchell. Mitchell has been one of the worst cornerbacks I've seen this year. I mean, I haven't watched a lot of games other than Steelers games, but I've watched a lot of Chiefs games because they've been prime time. And Mitchell has been exposed so many times. He's really bad. So I'm actually thinking this is an upgrade. And I mean, I guess they got a veteran in the locker room to coach the younger guys. It's an okay move. I mean, I still think he's washed, but better than Terrence Mitchell. What do you think?
We have similar thoughts on the matter. Look, I don't know. I mean, at the beginning of the season maybe, but this guy doesn't know the defense, and I don't know. Yeah, the Mitchell, as you mentioned, he hasn't been good, but I can't get the lasting images of Revis's last season just constantly getting burned over and over again. He's not very good. I think he'd be better actually if you moved him to safety, but there wouldn't be any point in doing that because he's got, a year or 2 left. I think this is the last gasp for Revis. He's fallen quite a bit, but, he could very well be better than Mitchell, and maybe he'll have a chance to show that he still does have a little bit of it, but I don't think he does. A couple other guys who definitely had it for a long time are up for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. The semifinalists for the class of 2018 were just announced. 2 former Steelers, Hines Ward and Alan Faneca, were both named. This is the 2nd year in a row for Hines Ward and the 3rd for Alan Faneca. 15 finalists will be announced in January before a final class of 4 to 8 will be announced right before the Super Bowl. What do you think their chances are this year, respectively, to make it?
Well, Hines Ward, I'm starting to doubt, like, his chances at all, which is kind of scary. Like, when he retired, I thought he was a sure-in, and that now it's, with all the stats wide receivers are putting up, Hines Ward was more of a blocking wide receiver. He's really good for his blocking. I think because of his stats, they're going to hold him back for at least a while. We might not see him go in there for quite a while, if he even makes it in. I'm kind of scared for that, but Faneca actually has a good shot, I would say. I think Faneca, this might be his year. I haven't actually seen the rest of the finalists, but I think no doubt Terrell Owens is finally going to make it in because he needs to get in. It's become a little bit ridiculous at this point. And other than that, that's the only one that I actually know is on the ballot this year. I think Faneca still has a good chance regardless of who's there. What do you think?
Well, I can support what you're saying, Austin. Faneca has been on the ballot longer, so that helps him. Beyond that, the other offensive linemen that are in the running, if you will, there's 5 total, including him, and 2 of them are first-timers on the ballot. So that means it's basically Faneca against 2 other guys, and Faneca's the only pure guard. So I think that would actually help him in that case, especially when you consider the fact he was a 6-time All-Pro and a 9-time Pro Bowler. Beyond that, Ward, you're right, it is going to be very tough for him. Just in this class alone, he has the least amount of receiving yards compared to other guys like Torrey Holt, Isaac Bruce, and Terrell Owens, and Randy Moss. So, look, I mean, there's 2 quality guys. I would think that Moss and Owen should get in, and it is tough with all the numbers receivers are putting up nowadays, but the other thing to remember about Ward is, yes, he may not have had as dominant numbers, but he still had 12,000 receiving yards, 1,000 receptions. He had 2 Super Bowl championships, a Super Bowl MVP. He had 123 plus receiving yards in the 1 Super Bowl. He had 4 Pro Bowls and I forget how many All-Pros. He might not have had any All-Pros, but he was a 4-time Pro Bowler as well. He has better numbers than several Hall of Famers do, as a matter of fact. Guys like Andre Reed, Michael Irvin. So say what you will, it will likely be difficult, but I think he still deserves a look. So we'll obviously have more on that in the coming months. For now, though, speaking of Pro Bowl, the first information about the Pro Bowl has been released. So there are several current Steelers players leading their respective positions in the AFC Pro Bowl voting, starting with Le'Veon Bell at running back, Antonio Brown at wide receiver, Alejandro Villanueva at tackle, guard David DeCastro, center Marquise Pouncey, inside linebacker Ryan Shazier, and special teamer Tyler Matakevich. Furthermore, there are several other Steelers in the top 5 of their respective positions. This includes Chris Boswell, who's in 5th place as kicker, Ramon Foster, who's 4th at guard, TJ Watt, who's 4th at outside linebacker, Jordan Berry, who's 5th at punter, Roosevelt Nix, the fullback, who is 5th, Juju Smith-Schuster, who is 5th at receiver, and Vince Williams, who's 5th at inside linebacker. So now that you've heard all those names, if you can take a second to kind of digest that, what are your thoughts of the players who are currently on those respective lists, and are there any players that are missing from these 2 lists?
There's 3 things that come to mind immediately. 2 of these players don't belong here, and 1 player is missing. Cameron Hayward is so missing. I don't understand how he's not top 5 in anything. That doesn't make sense whatsoever. I think that's my biggest complaint. Then, furthermore, I have no idea. No, never mind. I take it back. I have an idea, but Villanueva shouldn't be leading tackles in Pro Bowl vote. I think it's because of the political standpoint of the NFL right now, and his image being idolized. But he is definitely not the number 1 tackle on the AFC side, in my opinion. And then the other thing I saw was Jordan Berry at 5th, and Jordan Berry has been ultimately failing for this team for most of the year. He's turning it around. He hasn't earned my respect yet to that, but that's way too high. When he ranks still, I think in the number 30 for punting average, you shouldn't be the 5th punter. I mean, maybe the shoestring tackle he made with Jesse James to save a blocked field goal going for points for the other team.
That doesn't deserve a Pro Bowl.
Yeah, exactly. It might have helped him, but it doesn't deserve a Pro Bowl. He made a good play, 1. So those are the 2 things I saw. Oh, and then, sorry, there's another one. Tyler Matakevich is the number 1 special teams player. Seemed a little odd. I know he did block. In the first game, he blocked the punt that led to a touchdown. But that just, I don't know if that's enough to make you number 1. For that position, I honestly couldn't tell you. I'm not very good at special teams evaluation. So maybe he is, and I'm just looking at it too much. But I feel like you could find another better special teams player. But maybe that's just me.
That one's hard to evaluate. I might be willing to forego that one, but I think you're pretty much correct everywhere else, though. I was agreeing with you entirely that Villanueva's status as the top voter for tackles is definitely because of his stance on the national anthem thing. As a matter of fact, he's still selling a lot of jerseys. I'm visiting my mother in Pittsburgh right now. Went to a Steelers store the other day, actually yesterday, and it was actually Dick's. They have your Antonio Browns, your Le'Veon Bells, your Ben Roethlisbergers, your James Connors, some T.J. Watt, and they also had Villanueva jerseys, and I was kind of surprised to see that. So I would think that that's why he's there. He's not deserving of being a Pro Bowler. I'm sorry, he's a solid player, but not a Pro Bowl player for sure. Beyond that, Cameron Hayward not even being in the top 5 is completely disrespectful and insulting to him. And I know it's fan voting, so I don't want to take a ton into this, but the dude has been a monster this year, and he definitely deserves a Pro Bowl. I think he deserves all-pro consideration for sure. So I just think that deserves to be mentioned. The Steelers have a game on Sunday. They are hosting the Green Bay Packers on Sunday Night Football, another primetime game. The Steelers coming off their big win over the Titans 40-17 on Thursday Night Football last week. The Packers were shut out at home by the Ravens 23-0. They're a hurting unit, quite figuratively and literally, Austin. I'm sure you have their injury report up in front of you right now. I don't even want to go through all of it, but suffice to say they're quite a damaged unit, if you will. They have 5 players who did not participate in practice yesterday, including both of their starting running backs, Aaron Jones and Ty Montgomery, and 2 of their best starting defensive players in Kenny Clark and Clay Matthews. So that doesn't bode well for them at all. I don't even know. Is that why you wanted to know who the third string running back was?
Yeah, because I knew it was. I knew that the guy starting was Jamal something. I couldn't remember the name, but I knew that guy would have to be the one to step up this game for them because they don't have anyone else. I think they have another guy named Trevor, but other than that, they're really low at running back right now.
They have another running back on the roster named Devontae Mays who was limited in practice. So, yeah, as far as the Steelers go, it's a lot simpler. They have just 5 players in total. Mike Mitchell and James Harrison were both full participants yesterday, so you would have to think they have a good chance to play already. And those who did not practice were Joe Hayden, as expected, Juju Smith-Schuster, who, as Mike Tomlin just said recently, had a hamstring injury. We'll have to keep you updated on that throughout the week. And Vance McDonald, who has an ankle injury, which unfortunately feels like whenever he's ready to start producing in the offense, he always gets hurt. So we'll have to see if he'll play as well. Moving on to the brief history between the Steelers and Packers, 2 old NFL franchises. This all-time series belongs to the Packers, though, with a 4-game advantage. The Packers currently lead this series 19-15. The Steelers, however, won the last game in Week 16 of the 2013 season. You might remember that game, Austin. If you don't, let me refresh this for you. Matt Flynn was starting for the Packers due to an injury to Aaron Rodgers. The Steelers it was actually Le'Veon Bell's first fumble in his NFL career before running for 100 yards. It was his first 100-yard game in Lambeau Field. Ben Roethlisberger had a rushing touchdown in this game. Le'Veon Bell rushing for the go-ahead touchdown late in that game, holding off the Packers for a win, bringing their record to 7-8, giving them a chance at the playoffs in Week 17, which they ultimately did not make, but the Steelers were still alive at that point. Current win streak, the Steelers have won the last game, so they're at a win 1. The postseason record, these 2 teams have played just one time in the postseason. The Green Bay Packers won Super Bowl 45 in February of 2011 by a final score of 31-25. Otherwise, these teams have just met in interconference matchups since then and before then. Just a fun fact about this little matchup, the Steelers have not lost a home game to the Green Bay Packers since 1970, which was the first season for the Steelers at what was their brand new stadium, Three River Stadium, which, as a matter of fact, was the predecessor to Heinz Field. So it was the first season not of the Steelers' current stadium, but the stadium prior to the current stadium, to give you an idea of how long ago that was. Moving on from that, though, Austin, this is another team that, as far as defenses goes, it's just another average unit at best, and you have to think that with the struggles they've had on the other side of the ball, this is a taxed unit, especially with all the injuries they have.
Oh, easily. The Steelers' offense comes into this game facing a middle of the pack defense, as you said, which is probably leaning closer to the back than the front. With the only thing they've been good at is stopping the run, ranking 11th in rushing yards allowed per game. But their pass defense isn't that great, which allows teams to not have to run as much. So that being said, Brown could have back-to-back weeks with a great game, as he should do well here. Same goes for the other wide receivers like Juju and Bryant, who will be facing quarterbacks Demarius Randall, Devon House, and Kevin King. And those guys aren't that great in my opinion. Demarius Randall was really good at one point, but I think he's fallen off. And then as for the rest of the defense, standout Kenny Clark will probably not be playing, as we said in the injury report, as well as linebacker Clay Matthews, who both didn't practice, as we said. And those are huge losses. All in all, this is really in the hands of Roethlisberger again. Because I don't think Bell will be fed against a defense that's only good thing is being good against the run, but who knows? I mean, in the beginning of the year, it felt like the Steelers weren't doing the right thing ever, so that, I mean, they could go back to it and just start rushing against one of the better rushing defenses in the league, so I guess we don't know, but with all the injuries to the Packers defense, the offensive line is going to need to perform better against them than last week against the Packers pass rush to move it long, and that's really about it for offense for me. What do you got to say, man?
Defensively, the Packers have been an up and down unit so far this year, but have been trending downwards lately, especially with the injury concerns that they've had. Defensive tackle Kenny Clark, as you mentioned, has been the Packers' best rush defender and is doubtful to play on Sunday. Outside of that, usual standout Clay Matthews, who is already underperforming this season by his standards with only 3.5 sacks, could also miss Sunday's game, meaning that the only player the Steelers really have to worry about in the front seven is Nick Perry, who actually has 7 sacks this season. In the secondary, safeties Morgan Burnett and HaHa Clinton Dix have been okay this season, but as a whole, the unit has struggled when they faced good quarterbacks. They've given up the most points this season when they faced the solid quarterbacks. They've given up 26-plus points in games against Matt Ryan and the Falcons, Dak Prescott and the Cowboys with Ezekiel Elliott, Drew Brees and the Saints, and Matthew Stafford and the Lions, meaning that because of last week's performance, Ben Roethlisberger has to like what he's going to see. I think the Steelers opened this game up much in the same way that they did last week with some up-tempo and quick-hitting passes while occasionally trying to take the top off of the Packers' defense. I expect the offense to score early and often in this one because the Packers' defense cannot match the firepower the Steelers have. I think it wouldn't be unreasonable to expect the Steelers to open up a double-digit lead at halftime. If the Steelers can do this, you can expect a heavy dose of Le'Veon Bell on the ground in the second half. This is one area where the offense hasn't been clicking yet. Honestly, the last time they ran the ball with effectiveness was against the Bengals over a month ago. With the passing game seemingly on track now, this would provide Bell and the offensive line a good chance to start turning it around and getting the ground game back into the offense. Overall, this should be another good day, and hopefully with such an advantage on the other side of the ball, which we'll get to in a second, the Steelers can wear down and pick apart this unit for the entire game. As I just mentioned, it's a pretty favorable matchup for the Steelers defense. First and foremost, they're not playing Aaron Rodgers, so that's a win for them right there. And then playing Brett Hundley's another win, so that's 2 wins right there for them. But what is it about Brett Hundley? Why isn't he that good?
Because he doesn't throw to his best receiver at all, Jordy Nelson. To be honest, I was going to talk about this later, but I don't understand what happens to Jordy Nelson when Aaron Rodgers is not there. I don't know if Aaron Rodgers makes Jordy Nelson look good or not Devontae Adams. Brett Hundley just hates Jordy Nelson. Regardless, right now Jordy Nelson is 3rd on the team in receptions, and that's mostly because Hundley doesn't target him. Hundley's favorite target has been Devontae Adams, and that doesn't make sense. Jordy Nelson is often talked about as one of the best wide receivers in the league, and I guess Rodgers really has an impact on that because Randall Cobb has more receptions than him now, and that's just disgusting. He's been like a non-factor over the past couple of weeks, and it's really bad. But going back to the original question, I'm sorry. Brett Hundley has thrown 2 touchdowns, both to Devontae Adams, and he's thrown 7 interceptions. You can't win games by forcing that many turnovers and not getting enough touchdowns to make up for it. He's been failing as a quarterback. He's definitely not what people have said he was going to be. I mean, I didn't really expect much, to be honest. You're backing up Aaron Rodgers. You're backing up one of the greatest quarterbacks of our time, if not the greatest. Sorry, Tom Brady's still here. One of the greatest. I go back to it, and it's just there's not high expectations to even get close, but he is failing impressively, and it's really affecting the whole team. Aaron Rodgers was a big part of the Packers. He is a huge part of the reason why they always do good. He makes those clutch plays that no one else could, and the Packers are suffering because of it. They can't win games with 2 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. They're not a team meant to come back or be stick in a game because their defense is bad. They're a team that's supposed to be explosive on offense with Aaron Rodgers, and it's now in shambles. But moving on to the rest of the offense, it's not just injuries on defense in the Packers. There's also injuries on offense. The Packers will be more than likely without rookie running back Aaron Jones as well as Ty Montgomery this game, leaving them with Jamal Williams as a starter. And from what I've seen so far, he's not impressive. Nowhere near what Aaron Jones flashes, and doesn't have Montgomery's pass-catching abilities. So I'm honestly not worried about him at all, especially with the defense being shut down against the run the past couple of weeks after starting not so well. They now rank 8th, if I remember correctly, in rushing yards allowed. And that's much better from, I think, 5 weeks ago where they were at 23rd. So they've really improved as a whole in that regard. But to be honest, the Packers' offense is lackluster at best with Brett Hundley. Without Aaron Rodgers, as I said, this team is in shambles. They look awful, but I'm sorry, I actually already went over this. I was just going to re-go over it. But just to recap, Hundley's just been terrible. I think the defense is really going to have a good time here. They should really go off against this poor offense that has shown nothing.
I have a question.
I'm sorry, what?
I have a question. Let me precursor this. I was listening to some sports radio in Pittsburgh today. They were bringing up a question as to why not, if the Packers lose the next couple of, lose this week and say they're 5-6, but there's still an outside chance at a playoff spot, but it's clear Brett Hundley isn't the answer. Should they sign Colin Kaepernick? Let me tell you who their backup right now is, by the way. Their backup quarterback, his name is Joe Callahan. You know him, right? Joe Callahan?
Yeah, I know.
You should know him because he's from Wesley College, and for those of you who don't know what Wesley College is, you really should not. Wesley College is the school that's going to be playing the school I currently attend in the Division III football playoffs this Saturday. So
wow. I heard of Joe Callahan only because I heard about him on Sports Center because they were talking about it with Brett Hundley's performance. I mean, if Kaepernick's in shape, I feel like he can't be worse than 2 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. I mean, maybe he can, but I mean, I feel like you really have to give anything a shot here. So, I mean, I think they could sign Colin Kaepernick. I feel like they could be the team because their quarterback, they're kind of being stubborn. Brett Hundley needs to be benched, in my opinion, but
yeah, he hasn't shown he's an NFL quarterback. And if you're not willing to sign him, you're admitting that you care more about appeasing your fan base than winning. And I'm sorry, but winning's kind of important in the NFL, especially when you consider the fact that they still have a chance. It's not like they don't have a chance, even though the team really isn't that good without Aaron Rodgers. The point is they're still there, so why throw it away when you don't have to? I don't know. As controversial figure as he is, I'm telling you, he's going to be better than Joe Callahan for sure. I'm sorry, Joe, but he's definitely better than that. And I mean, I don't have a reason. If you take a chance on him and he's as bad as Brett Hundley, you take that chance. That's just the way I see that. But yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there because I learned he was from Wesley College, and I was like, wow, that's kind of funny that my college football team is going to be playing them later this week. But getting back to the issue at hand, a lot has been made of the struggles for the Packers offense without Aaron Rodgers, and they are legitimate. With Aaron Rodgers under center for the first 5 full games of the season, the Packers averaged just over 27 points a game. In 4 starts with Brett Hundley, the Packers are averaging 12.5 points per game. Even throwing out the shutout loss last week, the Packers haven't scored more than 17 points a game with Hundley at quarterback. That alone should give the Steelers a huge advantage. But then you look at the lineup on outside of the quarterback. Martellus Bennett is gone, so the Packers are without a legit number 1 tight end. They've given up the second most sacks in the league, and they're 19th in the NFL in rushing, and they, as you said, they might be without their top 2 backs. So even beyond that, here are your 3 concerns. Their names are Jordy Nelson, Devontae Adams, and Randall Cobb. As you mentioned pretty well, though, Jordy Nelson has disappeared from the offense without Aaron Rodgers. He hasn't caught a single touchdown pass since he left, and he hasn't had more than 60 yards in a contest, and those 60 yards came in the game where Rodgers was injured. Nelson's high in a start with Hundley has been 4 catches for 35 yards, and beyond that, Randall Cobb has posted somewhat similar numbers, if a little better, a slightly higher yards per reception, but still no touchdowns. Devontae Adams has been the clear favorite for Hundley, as you mentioned. He's caught 2, 7, 5, and 8 passes in the 4 consecutive starts for Hundley, including 126 yards in the outing last week. With Adams being the clear favorite target, the Steelers must be ready to shadow him. Don't let him bust the big play, and don't allow the ground game to find any holes that they shouldn't have. They have a below average ground game, and taking away the top receiving option on top of the poor offensive line and, the 36 sacks against, that should be a recipe for a disaster if you're the Green Bay Packers. The Steelers should have no problem holding the Packers to 20 points or less in this one. I think it could get ugly. We could be looking at another 4-sack, 3+ interception performance. So the defense really has the advantage in this one. In special teams, Austin, I'll jump right into it. There's not much going on for the Packers returning game this season. Trevor Davis has been their man so far, but he's only averaging 23.1 yards per kick return this year, and if you take away his long of 33 yards in punt returns, he's averaging under 8 in total, so there's nothing too scary there. As far as the specialists go, Mason Crosby's been okay this year. He's only missed 3 kicks, but he's also only attempted 14, and he's missed 2 PATs, so he hasn't been as good as the numbers may suggest. Punter Justin Vogel has been pretty good, though. He's not averaging an intimidating number, only 44.5 yards a punt, but the impressive number comes right here, Austin. He has 14 punts downed inside the 20 compared to 0 touchbacks. So if he's punting it close to the Steelers' end zone, you can bet it's not going to be a touchback. So
Wow, that's impressive. I didn't honestly know that. You don't hear much about punters on SportsCenter and ESPN and stuff, so that's actually really cool.
Yeah, do you have anything else you wanted to add for that?
No, I actually don't.
All right, fair enough. Hopefully we can see Brown return some more punts this week. If not him, then maybe we'll see Cameron Sutton. He was activated off of IR, by the way. We didn't mention that. With the Gilbert suspension, the Steelers did not have to cut anybody. They just moved Gilbert to the suspended list, and Sutton came off IR and onto the active roster. So maybe if he's active, we'll see him return some punts.
I hope so. We've been talking about Antonio Brown getting off with such malice that I think we're just kind of hoping someone else takes it.
Yeah, I don't think anyone would be shocked to hear us say that. But let's get to keys to the game. What's your offensive key for the Steelers on Sunday?
Mine is that the offense needs to do more no-huddle offense. The Steelers are home again, so there's no excuse to not see some more of that great offense that I like to see. And when it's sprinkled in so that the tempo is constantly changing, it catches defense off guard. So I want to see that no-huddle stuff. What is your offensive key to the game?
Get an early lead. Brett Hundley had been improving slightly over the past 3 starts before running into a brick wall that is the Ravens' defense last week. But all you need to know about the Packers' offense with Hundley is how they don't utilize Jordy Nelson as opposed to Aaron Rodgers. By taking the running game out of the equation, you force Hundley to win the game with his arm, and he won't target Nelson, so that means he'll be throwing it to Devontae Adams and Randall Cobb. I'm sorry, but those guys are not going to be able to beat you. On the other side of the ball, what's the defensive key for the Steelers?
It's to make the tackle by any means necessary. Gang tackle, guys. I'm basically mirroring yours, but it's because not making tackles has resulted in big plays the past few weeks, and it's really getting annoying. So they need to make those tackles. What is your defensive key?
Like Austin was hinting, mine is don't give up the big play, especially through the air. Playing off of what you just said, the big pass to Rashard Matthews last week could have ended up in being just a 50-yard throw and catch that Sensabaugh and Golden could have finished, but they both missed tackles, and that led to a 20-yard run to the end zone. And that had you stopped him at the 20-yard line, that would have given your defense a fighting chance to not give up a touchdown. Too often this season, the defense has given up explosive plays. While they've cut down on the big rushing plays against, they've given up longer passes. So this being the case, don't let those talented receivers get behind you. Don't let them bust a short pass 70 yards. You know, if you take away the big play and make the tackle, you're going to have to make Hundley go 8 or 10 plus play drives to score, which, won't happen. Furthermore, Austin, playing into your keys, if you will, who's your X factor on offense?
My X factor on offense is Chris Hubbard. Back to being a starter and back to being my X factor. He has some big shoes to fill with Gilbert out again, and it's up to him to keep the pressure off of Ben. I think this is like my 3rd time making him my X factor because he is one of the weak links on offense when he plays. I mean, he's not even that bad.
He's a reserve, and his position is pretty important. So
exactly, yeah. He's not supposed to be playing, so he becomes the X factor because how he plays will really play into how the game goes for Ben. So, who is your offensive X factor?
Mine is Martavis Bryant. He's had a few more contributions over the last few weeks following his 1-game suspension, if you will. However, we really haven't seen him have a dynamic game at all this season. I'm not saying we should expect that, but if we're going to see more from the offense like we did last week, Bryant's going to play a part of it. You can live with the 2 to 3 catches for 35 to 50 yards we've gotten from him, but I think if you can get him to catch 1 or 2 of those deep passes that he didn't come down with last week, we're talking about 30 points being a lot more easier to be attainable. And, that's all I think it really takes is just 1 or 2 of those plays. On the other side, who is your defensive X factor for the Steelers?
My defensive X factor was originally Robert Golden, and then I saw that Mike Mitchell was a full participant in practice, which surprised me. But so I switched it to Mike Mitchell. Coming back from an injury is never easy, especially an ankle or an Achilles. And then not only is that hard, but re-injuring the same injury that he had earlier in the season makes it even harder. So he's going to be my X factor because he's coming back from injuring himself a second time in the same exact area. So Mike Mitchell's my X factor here. I hope he makes better tackles than Robert Golden. That's all I'm hoping for. Who is your defensive X factor?
It's defensive back partner Artie Burns. He's had a rough couple of games. He could have been responsible for another passing touchdown against last week had Delaney Walker not dropped an easy touchdown pass in the end zone. Burns has been okay this season, but he didn't make that big jump I think we were all expecting in the preseason. He doesn't have to be a world beater either, though. Just don't make the mental mistakes like being caught looking in the backfield or giving up on a play he shouldn't be. That should stop the explosive plays against. You can live with him being a solid player, but you can't live with those mistakes that lead to huge touchdowns. So, Austin, it's time for the bold predictions. I'll start with mine. I think Ben Roethlisberger continues his recent hot streak. He throws 2 more touchdowns, no interceptions, and goes over 300 yards, thus bringing his total over the last 5 games to 11 touchdowns and just 2 interceptions against. I also think Le'Veon Bell gets going on the ground again, surpassing 200 total scrimmage yards and going over 125 on the ground. and I think the Steelers' defensive line has a great day, piling up 4 of the Steelers' 6 sacks on the day. They intercept Hundley twice and force a fumble for 3 total on the day. What about yours, Austin?
The defensive line?
Yeah.
Or just the defensive line intercepts Hundley twice, God?
Oh, no. That's not what I meant. No. I meant I meant the defensive line gets the 4 sacks.
Oh, okay. I thought when you said they also, I was like, that is Super Bowl, man. That is beyond.
Let me reiterate, since it's early and I didn't say it very well. I think the Steelers' defensive line will be responsible for 4 of the Steelers' 6 sacks on the day. Separately, the defense as a total will intercept Hundley twice and will force a fumble for 3 total. Now, if somehow they get 2 interceptions, I may have to go see if I can win the lottery tomorrow, but I mean, I for one don't see an interception by a defensive lineman the rest of the season. Let's put it that way. So no, I'm not quite that crazy, not yet.
That'd be impressive. Honestly, even predicting 1 is kind of impressive because they don't happen very often. But going on to my bold predictions, my first one is that this is kind of bold only because we don't really know what his hamstring injury is like. Tomlin said it was small, but he didn't practice today, so that's worrying. But Juju Smith-Schuster has a 60-yard touchdown on a Ben being Ben type play and extending the play. The next one is Antonio Brown has another big day, reeling in 2 touchdowns on 6 catches for 124 yards. And my final prediction is going to be that the defense comes up with 4 turnovers for the second season in a row. Second game in a row. And all 4 go to defensive backs. No other position. So that's my final bold prediction.
Austin, I'd like to make an amendment to my last bold prediction simply because I don't think it was bold enough, and it got me thinking. I think Cameron Hayward gets a pick 6 in this game because it's super bold. I wanted to say Javon Hargrave, but I honestly don't think I've ever seen him drop back into coverage, so I had to go with Cam Hayward, as sad as that does make me. I still want to see the big man get a pick 6. If for some reason he does, I'm definitely gonna have to find the soundbite and tweet at him I called this. Love me.
Please bring me out to a game. I knew it.
I called it. I deserve this stuff because I have sorcery and powers. Oh my god, that would be ridiculous. But beyond that, let's get right into our pick'em segment. We have 3 games going on tomorrow. It's Thanksgiving football, Austin. It's I don't know how you feel about Thanksgiving football, but I usually love it. It's just a tradition for me.
I really love it. I go to my grandmother's and everyone's a sports fan there, so I usually like it, especially last year. Last year was the Steelers' first win on Thanksgiving, if any of you don't remember, against the Colts. I think they were 0-4 on Thanksgiving coming into that game, so it was really nice to see last year especially.
Yeah, Thanksgiving had not been kind to the Steelers prior to last year. You had the infamous coin flip game where Jerome Bettis called, I believe, heads, or no, he called tails, but the official heard him start to say heads, so he said, he called heads. The Lions went to win in overtime following that. That was an overtime coin flip, by the way, not the start of the game. So there was that, and then there was the whole Mike Tomlin on the field with Jacoby Jones in the 2013 Thanksgiving game, which the Steelers also lost in a close fashion. And then last year was a pretty nice, convincing 28-7 win over the Scott Tolzien-led Colts. Antonio Brown, 3 touchdown receptions, just like he had last week. It was a good day for the Steelers to be a Steelers fan, and definitely a happy Thanksgiving for sure. But the Steelers are off on Thanksgiving this year. The Lions, as they always are, will be playing. They'll be hosting their NFC North rival, the Minnesota Vikings. We talked about this before we started, Austin. The Vikings hold a 2-game lead, but the Lions are currently 3-0 in their division, having won all 3 games on the road. So that means if they win tomorrow, they'll be 4-0 in their division with games only remaining against the Packers and the Bears at home. and they'd be 4-0 in the division and only one game behind the Vikings. So that could shake up the NFC North pretty easily if they win. But the Vikings are 3-point favorites. They played very well lately. The Lions and Steelers currently the only two teams to beat the Vikings this year. So all that in mind, who do you have in this 12:30 matchup?
I have the Vikings covering. I think they're a really good team. I think they proved that last week when they actually destroyed the Rams, who the Rams were starting to be expected to be like one of the top teams in the NFL this year. So I think Vikings are real deal, and they're going to be fighting the Eagles and Saints for Super Bowl later on this year. So Vikings cover. What do you got?
I think that would be the right choice to make, but I'm going to take the Lions to win outright. I've seen a lot of the Lions this year because my buddy Will Lester, whom we've had on this podcast before, is a Lions fan. I've seen the Lions quite a bit this year, and they have a great quarterback. There's no doubt about that. They've got an opportunistic defense. It'll be interesting to see if the ball control type of Vikings offense can keep it out of the hands of the Lions defense. But they had a 14-7 win over the Vikings earlier this year in Minnesota. I like to think that Matthew Stafford, who's I think is balling this year, I think he deserves some outside MVP consideration based on the way he's playing too. I think that's going to give the Lions a slight edge, so I think they win this one. Chargers at Cowboys. The Chargers are 2.5-point favorites at the 4:30 Thanksgiving game. The Cowboys scuffling back to 500. Or are they 5-6 now? They're 5-5, right?
I think they're 5-5.
They're scuffling without Ezekiel Elliott. Tyron Smith still expected to be out. The Chargers coming off a dominant win over the Bills. They've been up and down this year, but because of the Chiefs recently falling off a cliff, the Chargers are still in this thing. And I think that is going to give the Chargers some serious motivation to win this game. So I actually think the Chargers cover here. What about you?
Since I heard Tyron Smith should be playing, I'm picking the Cowboys to win outright because I think he's been the real difference maker for this team. A lot of people talk about Zeke Elliott being gone. I really think that Tyron Smith being gone has really, really hurt Dak Prescott. And if he's playing this game, I think that they should come back to a better form. I think Alfred Morris will run better. I think Dak Prescott will have more time in the pocket. And so Cowboys win outright here.
Is he like likely to play? Because I checked earlier in the week and I didn't think he was supposed to play.
I think he's questionable at the moment. I think he had a full participation
yesterday or today. Technically yesterday.
I think he should be good.
Interesting. Boy, Dak Prescott looks like a shell of himself when Tyron Smith isn't back there.
Yeah, it's awful. It's really bad. The left tackle position is obviously probably one of the best, the most important in the NFL. Losing that is just, it really hurts your team, especially when you have one of the best in the league. So,
man, I don't think I would ever make a decision based on just the starting left tackle. But if I knew he was playing for sure, I think I might change my pick. But I'm going to keep it for now. I'm hoping that he doesn't play just for that. I mean, I hope he's okay, obviously, but I think if he plays, I think Austin will be correct, and if he doesn't, I think I will be. Final game, kind of the snoozer of the day, the Giants at the Redskins, the late night game at 8:30. The Skins are getting 7.5 at home. I know the Giants just upset the Chiefs at home, but the Redskins are a better football team. I think they win this game probably by about 10, so I'll take the Redskins to cover.
I'm going to agree with you. I take the Redskins to cover here 10 times over. Every time I get super bold, it seems like my team gets upset, but I'm going to keep going with it, and Redskins should cover here easily. I think the Giants winning over the Kansas City Chiefs is more of a Chiefs failing rather than a Giants outperforming, so I'm just going to keep it simple and Redskins cover here.
Alrighty, breaking into the Sunday games, the Buccaneers are in Atlanta taking on the Falcons in this NFC North matchup. I actually took the Buccaneers plus 9.5 because it's a divisional game, and those always tend to be a little closer than you would think. What about you?
I chose the Falcons to cover. I really struggled here. I had the Buccaneers winning outright. Then I switched to Buccaneers plus 9.5, and then I ended up at Falcons cover somehow. I don't know. I think the Buccaneers are bad. I think Ryan Fitzpatrick is bad. I think the Falcons feel a little bit good about themselves beating a really beat-up Seahawks team, which they shouldn't feel good about because it was not really that great of a win. But,
they needed it.
So Falcons cover.
They did need it, though.
They did need it. They did need it to stay alive in the playoff race.
Yep. Yes, indeed. Browns at Bengals. The Browns still technically have a chance to make the playoffs. I think it's, 1 in 19 quintillion?
Yeah, they needed 40 things to go right, I think. I read that whole list. It was really funny. I think they needed 2 ties as well in that list.
Good God. The Bengals, who beat the Browns 31-7 in Cleveland earlier this year, getting 8 points at home. I really wrestled with taking the Browns plus 8, but even in the games they play close in, like last week, they were right there in the final minutes against the Jaguars, and then they lose 19-7. So I'll take the Bengals to cover this one. That just seems safe to me.
I'm going to take the Bengals to cover as well. The Browns have actually started off hot in each of their past games, and they let turnovers really mess with them. So I'm going to take the Bengals to cover because the Browns are still the Browns and don't look like they're improving anytime soon.
Titans and Colts in an AFC South showdown. I feel like the Colts are going to actually keep this one kind of close, but I think the Titans are going to be pissed off after they got slaughtered by the Steelers last week, and they have a few extra days off, so I think the Titans are going to be able to come back and cover in this one, even though the Colts are coming off a bye week. I think the Titans have the clear-cut advantage here.
I'm actually going to take the Colts to win outright. I did have the Titans covering, but something is telling me that Jacoby Brissett is going to have a really good day, so I'm going to pick the Colts to win outright here.
Cool. Bills at Chiefs. A couple of struggling teams right here. The Chiefs have lost 4 of 5. The Bills have lost 3 straight and have given up 135 points in those games. Going back to Tyrod Taylor in this game, the Bills are, but that's just a tough place to play, and I think the Chiefs get back on the winning track here. I think the Bills are a mess of a football team, and I think they're just going to get absolutely shellacked in this game. What about you?
I personally think the Bills are going to keep it close because the Chiefs have been performing bad, the Bills have been performing bad. I think they're about at the same level. I think Kansas City will still edge this out, but I think the Bills are going to keep this much closer than people would think. So I have Bills plus 10.
Dolphins at Patriots, another AFC East matchup. The Patriots are getting 16 points at home after dismantling the Raiders in Mexico City. The Patriots are a buzzsaw, Austin. They're going to win this game by a lot. The Dolphins are a disgusting football team.
Yeah, I think this is the biggest spread we've seen all year, if I remember correctly. I think the only one I can remember being close as big was Seattle versus 49ers.
No, it wasn't that big. It was only 14.5. Only 14.5.
Yeah, second biggest, I think. So this, I think, is the biggest one, and I think the Patriots still cover it because the Dolphins are bad. So that's the best explanation I could give. The Dolphins are bad.
Yep. Panthers at Jets. This has the makings of a trap game. The Jets coming off a bye week and they're home. But, I kind of thought the Panthers weren't a very good team, but they've kind of shown the last few weeks that they are a quality team. And Cam Newton's kind of righted the ship there. So they're currently leading, not leading the AFC South, but they're right there with the Saints, just a game behind. I think they'll win, but I think this is going to be a pretty close game. I think it comes down to a late field goal, so I'll take the Jets plus 4.5, Austin. What do you have?
I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to take the Jets plus 4.5. I don't like Carolina still, even though their record is pretty good. Their team as a whole just doesn't impress me, so I'm going to take the Jets plus 4.5.
Chicago Bears at Philadelphia Eagles. The first NFL team to clinch a winning record this season is getting 13.5 at home. I wanted to take the Bears plus 13.5, but I just think the Eagles are too much, so I'll take the Eagles to cover.
Because of their defense, I'm going to take the Bears plus 13.5 because the defense has kept the Bears in. Their offense is inept, but it's going to be really telling to see how they could slow down the Eagles' offense, which is one of the best in the league this year. So
good
Bears
matchup.
plus 13.5.
Good matchup on the other side of the football there. The Bears have that explosive running game. I think it's number 1 in the NFL. The Eagles have the number 1 rushing defense in the NFL. So that'll be cool to watch. Into the 4 o'clock games now. Seahawks, an injured Seahawks unit at the 49ers. Seahawks are getting 6.5 on the road. This one is going to be close, Austin, and I picked the Seahawks to cover. I'm not very confident in it. The Niners are trending upward, but I do think the Seahawks still just barely managed to cover this one.
I'm going to pick the 49ers plus 6.5 points, only because Seattle is so banged up, and the 49ers kept it pretty close the first time. So I'm going to take the 49ers plus the points.
What was the score last time?
I honestly can't remember.
Could you check that?
Yep, I'm going back right now.
All right, cool. Thank you. Broncos at Raiders, 2 teams struggling right now, especially the Broncos, who are at 3-7, are still technically in it, honestly, but they're starting Paxton Lynch, and the trio of quarterback failure they've had this season. Osweiler's not the answer. I think Simeon's better than Osweiler, but, whatever. We'll finally see how Paxton Lynch is going to play, and I don't think any people believe he's going to play well. So the simple fact of the matter is you have Derek Carr versus Paxton Lynch. I'll take Derek Carr and the Raiders to cover a 5-point spread, Austin. What about you?
Before we get into that, I just wanted to say the score of the first Seattle 49ers matchup. I remember it being close. I didn't remember it being this bad. It was 12-9 Seattle. They won by 3 points.
Oh, yes, I do remember that.
Yep. And one of the key plays in the game was Bobby Wagner picking up Brian Hoyer, as well as the touchdown that they got was Russell escaped. He did like a Ben Roethlisberger type play where Russell Wilson's becoming to be known for that. Actually, he's becoming the next. They're very different style players, but in terms of the way they escape the pocket and make plays happen, Russell Wilson is becoming the next magician like Big Ben, and he found Paul Richardson in the end zone for the only touchdown in that game. It's pretty good, but yeah. Moving on to the Broncos at Raiders, to answer the question, out of the Broncos winning outright, I'm going to take a chance at Paxton Lynch being able to do decently here. I honestly don't really have much hope in that. I'm just really picking that as a pot shot and just kind of hoping it plays out. I do think the Raiders are the better team, and I don't think Paxton Lynch is that good, but I'm holding hope for Dom that the Broncos win outright.
Yeah, poor Dom. The New Orleans Saints are traveling to LA to take on the Rams, another big matchup for the Rams team that fell short in their matchup with the Vikings last week, but they are home this time. I wanted to pick the Rams this time, but look, the Saints' defense has just been incredible, and they've been running the ball so well. I think the Saints are a legitimate Super Bowl contender, and I think that they beat the Rams. It won't be a blowout, but I think they'll beat them by at least a touchdown here. So I'll take the Saints to win outright, Austin.
I'm going to pick the Saints to win outright, too. I thought the Saints were better than the Vikings, and the Vikings kind of destroyed the Rams. So by deductive processing, I'm going to pick the Saints to win outright here. I think Drew Brees has been great. I think Alvin Kamara is amazing and fun to watch. I love Alvin Kamara. I love watching Saints games because of that guy. And Mark Ingram has been great as well. I think he has 6 touchdowns in his past 3 games, so that's something, too. And other than that, Michael Thomas and Ted Ginn Jr., I don't even know how many years he's been in the NFL. Feels like he's been in the league for 10 years, but it's probably less than that at the moment. But he's been doing well, and Michael Thomas has been doing well. The team as a whole has really just stepped it up. After the first 2 games where we thought, oh, this is just the Saints defense back to normal again, they really stepped up. Saints went outright.
All right. Last 4 o'clock game, Jaguars at Cardinals. The Jaguars are getting 5.5 on the road. Blaine Gabbert against that secondary doesn't seem good. I'll be interested to see how Larry Fitzgerald performs against them, but this is just too good of a team against too injured a team, and I think it'd be mindless to not pick the Jaguars to cover here.
Yeah, I think you got to pick the Jaguars to cover. The Cardinals starting Blaine Gabbert. That's all I needed to know. Jaguars cover.
All right, so we'll head into the Monday night game. That is the Texans at Ravens, an uninspiring, clunky offenses right here. The Ravens are getting 7 points, though. Look, Brett Hundley did not fare well against the Ravens offense. I don't think Tom Savage will perform well either, so I'll take the Ravens to cover here.
I'm going to pick the Texans plus 7. I don't really have a reason for it. I just think that the Ravens have been more than the time up and down, and I think that this is going to be one of their down games. So Texans plus 7.
All right, last game of the week, Sunday Night Football at 8:30. The Steelers are 14-point favorites against the Green Bay Packers, who are coming into Pittsburgh for the first time since 2009. That game also, the Steelers won in a shootout. The Steelers, Austin, I gotta be honest with you, I think this is going to be a good game. I think the Steelers win somewhat handily. I think their offense is going to be not necessarily firing on all cylinders, but I think we see another good game from the offense. Defensively, they'll give up a couple touchdowns, but I really don't see, until the Steelers stop giving up those big plays, I think they give up at least one of them, maybe another that leads to another touchdown. But there's no reason to think the Packers will score more than 2 offensive touchdowns. Special teams battle is pretty even. I think the Steelers are just going to eventually put this one away. So I think the Packers do score a couple times, but I think the Steelers won't break the 30-point barrier, but they'll come close. The Steelers win 27-14, so by virtue of that, the Packers just barely plus 14. What about you, Austin?
I have the Steelers winning 28-17 here, and 28-17 here, I'm sorry. And the Packers obviously plus 14 there. I feel like this game, the Steelers are going to play down to their opponent as they normally do. I mean, it's at home, but still. And, I mean, they're still going to win by 11, but I feel like it's going to be close in, the first half, and then they're going to pull away in the second half, similar to, in the Titans game last week. It was actually pretty close going into the second half. It wasn't, gone yet, and then they took off in the second quarter, the second half of the game. So, I have the Packers plus 14 and the Steelers winning 28-17.
Yep, it seems like until the Steelers put together that full game where they get it from everybody, the entire game, right from the start to the end, it feels like we won't see it. And you know what? That's not the worst thing in the world either. So I still think it's a quality win, even though you're looking at a team that probably definitely is not performing up to standards. But you know what? You'll take the win. The Steelers' last game against an NFC opponent this year, unless, of course, the Steelers make it to the Super Bowl. So the Steelers are currently 2-1 against the NFC North, having beaten the Lions and Vikings, but have lost to the Bears. So this will be the final one. AFC opponents the rest of the way. Austin, is there anything else you wanted to add before we finish up tonight on this lovely Thanksgiving morning?
I just wanted to say it because I just thought about it because it's so cool. There's never been a team to have a home field advantage in a Super Bowl. And the Vikings have a legitimate shot this year, and it might be their only time, because I don't know how many times they're going to put a Super Bowl in Minnesota. I mean, I know it's a dome, but still, they don't like to put it up north. And I think that's kind of cool that the Vikings actually have a shot at having home field advantage in the Super Bowl this year.
Interesting. The Lions hosted a Super Bowl the year the Steelers won it, so they don't like going to cold weather areas, but it's not like they'll never go there either.
Yeah.
So
I feel like it's always in Houston or Tampa. I feel like they get the Super Bowl so often.
Houston, Tampa are one of the stadiums out in California, like Pasadena.
Mm-hmm.
So
yep, always.
Time will tell. All right, Austin, we're going to wrap things up for tonight. We'll keep our eyes out on NFL action, but we won't do another episode until the Steelers-Packers game is over, most likely, right?
Yeah, I don't think we got another episode to do until then.
All right, cool. Well, I'll do my best to keep in touch with you, but not take you away from your family, as we'll be watching NFL action tomorrow. And it'll be weird. The Steelers also on a primetime game again. I like it. It's nice I don't have to stream things anymore. But, also you have to wait because they play at different times. But, we'll see. I think I prefer it this way. But, Austin, thank you again for joining me today. And you have a wonderful Thanksgiving morning. It's 2:09 in the morning right now. I was kind of tired and exhausted at the start of this, but I'm ready to start my Thanksgiving now.
I could go for some turkey right now.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, I need my mashed potatoes.
Dude, mashed potatoes sound really good right now.
I know.
But anyway, we have a giveaway, guys. Don't forget about it. It ends in, I think, a week now. I think it's December 2nd, so it's a little over a week, 9 days. And just don't forget to enter it. It's free. You can win a Funko Pop of Ben Roethlisberger. It's pretty cool. It's collectible. I have a bunch on my headset above me. Don't forget to enter that. And Steeler Nation, have a good night.
Good night, Austin.
Good night.
You have been listening to Stronger Than Steel podcast. Thank you for joining us today, and don't forget to check out our website listed in the description below.